Yep.
Cool. All right. So we're going to do a drawing. And for that drawing, we will be looking at that gear assembly we made.
Okay.
Do you have SolidWorks open?
Yeah.
Cool. So we're going to do a B and C land format.
Okay.
Um, and then pops up the model view. We're going to click Browse and Lesson 6 Assembly. Okay. Let me know when you have let me know if you have any issues with getting your views up. I know if you don't have you don't have the view layout things, you have to do the insert drawing view model. But
You just want those three views?
yeah. So front view, and then you can go upwards to get your top view, and then drag diagonally for a trimetric view.
Okay.
Because the side view doesn't really seem to give us much that's too useful. So what I'm actually going to do is this is how I've done these kinds of drawings in the past. So um, I think I'm going to just delete these two views and only keep the isometric one actually. Um, and we'll just do that for now. Um, and with the isometric view, if we do Control C, Control V, we can copy it. I'm going to show you what I want to do with the second one. So let me know when you have two isometric views. I think that's all we're going to really need for this one.
Okay, I have two of them.
Cool. Is 1:1 too big? That 1:1's a little too big. Okay. I'll keep you at 1:2. So remember how we did an exploded view with these, with our
Uh,
assembly?
lesson?
Huh?
Last lesson?
It was like a lesson or two ago. I forget exactly when we did it. It might have been last.
I I don't remember how to do that.
You don't? Well, I'm thinking we might already have it, is what I mean. So if we
Uh,
click the one on the left, for example, and do you have a little thing where it says reference configuration that has a little checkbox to show an exploded view?
yeah.
Anything like that?
Oh yeah, I have that.
Yeah, so if you hit check, you'll see it actually displays that assembly model now in your exploded view.
Hmm.
Um, which can be kind of useful. Um, so this is something that I like to do. I like to provide an exploded view when I'm doing a drawing for an assembly. Because when you're doing an assembly, with this specific one, we don't really need to do any dimensions because think about it, we have this block that slides and the gears that turn and everything else kind of just slips into each other. But we'll talk a little bit about dimensioning these in a little bit. But I just wanted to show you that you can do exploded views for assemblies in here. So I also want to show you, so if you go to Insert, Tables, and then Bill of Materials, right? It asks you to select a drawing view to specify the model. So I'm going to click that one, and I'm just going to hit check. I'm not going to change anything. I like to,
Which one did you?
sure. I clicked the left one, but it shouldn't matter. And it's going to make a bill of materials, which is really useful. So it gives you item numbers, which we'll kind of see why those are useful. Part numbers, this just goes by your file name. So whatever you named your file, that's what it'll show. And your quantity. And I don't know, I'm pretty sure you can include a description in your SolidWorks part. I don't know how to do that though, to be completely honest. So the description's blank for us because there's nothing built in, but um, I don't know how to do that, unfortunately. But if I did, that could be a useful feature. So do you have your bill of materials? If not, I can go over it again.
Yeah, I have it up.
Awesome. So the reason why the item numbers are useful, so now if we click on that exploded view one, and you have the annotation tab, what you can do is if you click on, there should be one called auto balloon. It's like a little magnifying glass with a lightning bolt next to it. So if we click on that, what it'll do is it'll just automatically toss up a bunch of little labels for all your different parts, which is really, really nice. Saves you a lot of work. And sometimes the labels aren't very good, to be completely honest, right? Like, I know with mine for this number 5, I don't really like where that arrow is right now. But what I can do is I can always just change it by kind of just dragging and putting it somewhere else, which is kind of nice. Were you able to get the auto balloons to pop up?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're just really nice. It gives you a nice little index so people can look at, they could see what each part is, Um, it's super useful. And I mean, you see this a lot in like different, even like just furniture. Like if you ever look at like an IKEA catalog, like how to assemble their furniture, we're kind of trying to do a similar thing where we're labeling what each of these items are. And this is especially useful if like, for example, maybe you're doing a more complex one where it includes like screws. Well, these auto balloons will let people know what screw you need to use, right? Based on your bill of materials. And bill of materials are going to tell them what parts they need. I usually like to have an exploded view, and that's what I usually put the balloons on. And then this other view, I like to have of just what it looks like when it's all put together. I like to do the exploded view for the labeling though, just because like if you look this block, it's really hard to see um, in this one. So I like to do that for an exploded view. Does that kind of make a little bit of sense?
Yeah.
Awesome. So another thing you can do with drawings, we didn't really cover this before, but if you click down here, you can actually add a second sheet to your drawing. So you can make a drawing that's actually 2 sheets. And I'd like to,
Where click?
there's a little
Oh,
like,
oh, the thing right next to where it says sheet
yep,
1.
yep. Now this is how I like to do assemblies. I've never really been trained in how to do them, but this is how I did them at work and they seem to be happy with it. So, but if I ever needed to do dimensions, right? Because I usually have one page of isometric views for, your part number labeling and giving a general idea of how it's put together. But if you ever made something where it needs specific dimensions to be put together, I usually like to do that on a separate sheet. So just to kind of save space. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Insert, Drawing View, Model, right? And I'm going to click on the assembly again. That's what I'm going to select again. And here is where we're going to do our front view and then also our top view. And I wonder if these we can make a little bit bigger. We can make these a little bit bigger. That's cool. And we can make those 1-to-1. They'll fit on the sheet still, which is nice. So yeah, let me know whenever you're finished with all that. Just getting these.
Yeah, I'm all finished.
Cool. So let's say we wanted some dimensions here, right? Like this was kind of designed as like just something to mess around with mates, but let's say we cared about this mechanism, right? So what we could do is we can, apply a couple dimensions. So like, for example, actually, I might drop this back down to 1 to 2 because I'd like to actually do. So one thing is, let's start by just dimensioning something like maybe the angle of this hand matters to us. Oh, come on. Please let me do that. Yeah. So maybe the angle of that arm is really important to us. Maybe I want that at exactly, what is that, 38.27 degrees or whatever yours is. Maybe we care a lot about that, And then we probably would then also care about the angle of this second arm here. And we see that that one is about 20.56 degrees, the way I measured it. So we can we can dimension stuff like that, that maybe we care about. And if we wanted to, maybe dimension, how far to one side, these are like the position, in the x-axis. One idea we could do is maybe dimension from that outer edge to the center of one of these circles. So like that. So, from the outer edge to the center of this circle, it's 0.410 inches. Cool. Could do it that way, right? Just to kind of come up with some other ideas though. Let me think. Let's see what else could we do. We could also do like a section view, right? If I were to do, I think that's what I want to do. Yeah. So another thing I can do is if I did a section view, right? Essentially what I did was like I cut this slide in half, and now we're looking at it from the bottom. And ooh, I wonder if I could flip the direction of that actually. I like that a little bit more actually.
Where would I do the section view?
Sure. So insert, drawing view, section view.
Okay.
And remember, the way that works is it basically cuts it in half, and then you're looking at, like this, the area where you sliced it. Right. And I'm doing that to allow me to dimension off of this block instead of the gears, because going from the center of the gear to one side is a little tricky. But if we were to tell them, oh, from one side of the slide block to the end of the little sleeve thing, we want that to be an exactly a dimension, that's a lot easier to do than like from the center of a circle, kind of measuring edge to edge.
Mm.
So what I did was I did a section view. And what I did was, originally it looked like this with the gears. It was facing upwards, as you can kind of see by the arrows. But I didn't really like seeing the gears there, so I flipped the direction. So now we're looking at it from downwards. So we're only seeing the sleeve and our little block slider, which I think makes a little bit more sense visually. So that's kind of what I'm doing. Does that make sense? Like this would also be fine, but I think that looks a little bit cleaner. Let me know if you need me to slow down. I can slow down, stop, back.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get the section right because one of the sides isn't letting me.
Sure. Okay. I'm gonna just kind of restart and I'll do it right now. So we go to drawing view, section view. And now before we were doing it like vertically like this, but as you can see, we could change the direction of our cutting line or like the orientation of it, I guess.
Mm.
So we're gonna swap it to horizontal, right? And from there, we'll basically just select somewhere that's like kind of roughly in the center, or we could even like have it right on the center point of our slide. Are you kind of where I'm at right now?
Yeah.
Cool. And if we click, we hit check, and we just hit OK in this dialog box. Yeah. And then we'll get this as our section view. Yeah. And see how I'm saying, like, look, it's the arrows are pointing upwards. So we're looking at this cut like from the bottom up, which is why we can see the gears. I don't like that as much. I want to see it from the top down. So I just see the little slide and the block in the middle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on my section view and then click to flip the direction. And now you can kind of see, I just see my slide and I see my little block, which I think makes a lot more sense looking at it visually. Right, because if you think about it, if you're assembling this, you're probably looking at this assembly from the top down. So I think this makes a little bit more sense.
Mm.
The other thing we actually could have done if we wanted to is, you don't have to do this. If we wanted to, we could actually put the section view right at the very top of the slide. Because what that would do is now we actually just see the thing without the gears, right? Which is kind of nice. And another thing you can do in some of these drawings is, I'll do this we'll do this in a second, but this is kind of like a section view method of dimensioning it instead, where now we can do smart dimension from the block to the end, and boom. The reason why I did this section view is just to kind of get rid of the gears, right? Because I wanted to just be able to see the block underneath in the slide. And section view is one way you could do that, right? Because I basically cut this thing in half and looked downwards. So I'm just seeing what's underneath the gears now. And that's going to allow me to do a dimension from the edge of our sleeve thing to the edge of our block, which would be a lot easier to do some assembly with versus like the center of a gear to the side of the sleeve. I think if someone asked me to choose between this dimension and this dimension, I think this one's a lot easier to follow. Does that kind of rationale make any sense? Hoping I didn't lose you.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. But yeah, usually when you're doing assemblies, when you're doing your dimensioning, really you want to make sure you're giving people the information they need and also try to make it as easy for them as possible to follow your directions. Like this one here is kind of tricky to follow because you'd have to measure from the edge to like the inside of like the center of a gear, which is really tricky measuring to like the center of holes or circles or anything. This is a lot easier. You just put like a little tape measure or a ruler or a caliper just from one edge to another. Measuring edge to edge is always way, way easier than measuring from an edge to the center of the circle. So I'd say this dimension is a lot easier. So I'm actually going to delete this 4.1 and just do that. So another thing you can do is, I believe, yeah. So another thing you can do on assemblies, I wouldn't recommend this so much. Kind of use this with caution, but something you can do with some of these views is if I click on this circle here, I'll click on this one, right? I right click on it. There's a ton of options that come up, and one of them is show slash hide. If I click hide component, it just straight up disappears, right? And what I could do is I can add a note to like here, maybe saying like gear. Actually, I wouldn't use this for dimensioning because I think this falls under the hidden lines rule. But sometimes like you'll just have a part in your assembly that's just blocking the view, and it's making everything else super challenging. What you can do is if you kind of select the part and then right click on it, you can hide it. Just make sure you're noting that you're hiding it and make sure it's not like a very important piece. Like I know in the past what I've done is I designed like this encoder calibration setup kind of thing, and it had these two big massive wheels on it, almost like one of those like tape recorder spools like you see on like the really old film cameras.
Mm-hmm.
And they blocked everything in my assembly drawing. So what I did was in one of the views, I hid them so that you could see everything else. And I left a note, but I made sure they were in the other ones. In this case, I wouldn't recommend doing this because we don't have a lot of parts and those gears are kind of important. So I'm just going to undo what I did there because it's probably better to go for a section view approach here because we don't want to hide those gears. They're very important. And it's important for people to see that they mesh together like that. So kind of keep it in the back of your mind that you can hide components if you want to. You just have to be careful because sometimes it's not a good idea. But yeah, does that assembly stuff kind of make sense as far as doing drawings for them? It's a lot less.
Yeah.
I think it's a little easier than doing parts a lot of the time. I kind of enjoy this step because this is super easy. The computer does it for you, basically, all this stuff. You just have to set up your exploded view. And then this stuff over here, you have to toss in some dimensions, but, and I'll be honest, usually you don't need to do section views for this kind of thing. I just felt like this was an application where they're kind of useful, so I wanted to show it off. But in most situations with assemblies, you won't be using section views. You really won't. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of that's really all I really have to share as far as doing drawings with assemblies. Do you have any questions on drawings with assemblies or even just drawings in general?
No, I don't have any questions.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'll be honest. This is basically all I had planned for this lesson. So I'll kind of just go over what I have planned for because think my quote unquote contract is for 10 lessons and this is the ninth. So right now, my hope is in the next lesson, we're going to completely drop assemblies and drawings and just go back to parts. And I'm going to show you guys 2 or 3 more tools with parts that are super useful for designing stuff. These are a couple ones that are harder than the other ones we've done. And I wasn't going to originally include them, but I was kind of thinking about it, and I think they could be useful for some robot design parts. So I'd like to at least show you guys the basics of how to use them. Even if, you guys maybe don't fully understand them, at least kind of getting that exposure. So that way, when you maybe need to use them, you can kind of look them up, maybe look up a tutorial video, and it'll be a lot easier for you to understand. And then additionally, I still need to get in contact with John, but I think it would be a good idea for him to run one of these drawing ones, especially for like parts. So I might see if he wants to run another meeting as well. So I think the next one will be kind of like advanced making of parts. And I think is like, obviously not homework, but I think kind of like a final challenge that would be cool is just to see you guys like just make something totally new, not like design a new thing, but like maybe just pick an object and try to make it in CAD and maybe do a drawing of it as well. And just,
Mm,
just to see, I don't know, do you feel like you'd be able to do that? Like just pick an object, make a part
yeah.
and do a drawing for it?
Yeah, I think I could.
Cool. Yeah, I think that would just be a good way to just, kind of do a little test to see how you feel about stuff. Obviously, if you don't want to do it, I don't care too much, like I'm not doing any grades or anything. So, and you classes have started for you guys, so I don't want to give you guys homework, obviously. But this is all I had for assembly drawings. I really just wanted to go over the fact that you can do exploded views. Bill of materials is super, super useful. And one thing, you can double click in this description box. It'll just like break the link. But it will also allow you, basically what that means is this won't auto update. The way this works now is if if I were to like add parts or something or add an extra part, it would automatically update. Or like if I were to remove this part, it would remove it from the bill of materials. By double clicking this cell, I've broken the link to it. I believe just in this row, it might be the whole thing. So now it just won't auto update, but I could still just delete it and refresh it almost, if that makes sense. But I could do like sleeve for slider block. Cool. I don't know. But yeah, so you can add descriptions yourself if you'd like. It's kind of up to you. Sometimes it could be useful. It depends on how well you named your part numbers. If you're naming your parts like 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe add a description. Even mine aren't very well described. Like, base. It's definitely not the best description. I'm really bad at naming parts. Yeah, so bill of materials is useful, doing exploded view, and then yeah, just how to do dimensions, and then the fact that you can hide objects if you want to. That's kind of all I had to show. But and you don't have
Okay.
any questions? No questions?
I have no questions.
Cool. All right, I will stop the recording.